encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network.
Hello, and welcome to Wifey Wednesdays, a podcast for women who are seeking to be the best wives they can be. I'm your host, Emily Hatfield, and this is the show where the plan is always to do things God's way, especially our marriages. I don't know if you have forgotten this, if you realize this. This is brand new this season. We are back to video for this podcast. So if you prefer to watch someone do a podcast, you can find the video version of this podcast. So if that's something you're interested in, by all means, please come and check out the hot mess that is my life. I am presently sitting next to a skeleton that has its body parts labeled. So like I said, you don't know what you're missing if you're only hearing my voice. Because if you hear the voice of my skeleton in my homeschool room, well, we got issues other than what we're talking about today, which is being a wife in trials. So welcome to that. We're going to be looking today at what it means to be a wife during trials. Okay, we're going, though, to try for this episode not to make it as heavy as some of the previous episodes have been this season, but no promises because it's me and I don't ever really know. All I can do is pull from my own experiences, and well, some of those aren't pretty. So we're just going to see what happens today when we talk about being a wife in trials. Listen to James as he speaks about trials. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Well, that last part, lacking nothing, sounds great. But getting to that point, the patience and the trials, well, that doesn't sound as great. And yet, that's where the good stuff comes from. That's where the strength is built. That's where the blessings come from. Notice a few things from James 1:2. First, we have our attitude in trials. Joy. Did you notice that it didn't say complain your way through the trials, grumble and mutter and moan through your trials? Nope. It said regard it as joy. Regard trials that you didn't ask for as joy. Regard trials that you didn't even bring upon yourself as joy. The trials here that we fall into, when you fall into various trials, these are the things we find ourselves surrounded by, like we've fallen into a swimming pool and are encompassed all about with water. That's the trials that we find ourselves in, surrounded on every side, maybe even feeling like you're drowning, but while having joy. How? And how? The attitude is where it begins, and the attitude comes from knowledge. You see, we aren't joyful about the circumstances. We're joyful about what will come from the circumstance if we let God work in our lives. So don't let people fool you into thinking that you've got to feel like you're drowning in life's circumstances with a smile on your face. Untrue. There are times that require weeping and mourning. There are times that aren't going to be pleasant. There are times that will test us and feel like the fiery darts that they are coming at us at all times and from all directions. The joy then is an assurance of who is in control and what he is able to do. And just what is God able to do? Well, exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or imagine. God is able to take what we lack and give liberally and without reproach, according to James 1:5. So, when we feel like we're being thrown into the midst of the fire, guess what? I know that my God is the God in the fire too. Remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? They were in a trial, that's for sure. And they didn't know if deliverance was coming in their lifetime. But They knew that if it didn't, it would come in the next. They knew God was in control, and sure enough, he was. He showed up in a big way in the midst of the fire. What about when we feel tossed to and fro by the waves of life? Well, it seems like I remember that God is also in control of the winds and the waves, too. The same Jesus who told the winds and waves to be still is the same Jesus who can calm the storms of our life. The same God who parted the waters of the Red Sea is able to part the waves of this life and make a way for us to glorify him through our journey. So, my sweet, sweet wifey friend, whatever it is that you find yourself going through right now, whether the trials are within your marriage or without, whether it feels like it's affecting your marriage or not, no matter how big, no matter how many, no matter how seemingly insignificant at the moment they feel, you can have joy in these trials. You can bring that joy into your marriage if you will focus on the who of the trials and not the what. Focus on how God has shown up in the past and how he is faithful to deliver you now too. I will never forget the day that the doctor personally called me after my tiny son's MRI to tell me something was wrong. I vividly remember feeling like my legs just couldn't hold me anymore, dropping to my knees in the middle of a friend's driveway. It felt like I had fallen into a trial, surrounded on every side with something terrible and unexpected. I remember what it felt like sitting in another doctor's office hearing that my tiny child likely had a fatal condition. I remember the weeks between the appointments where I didn't know what was wrong and what could be done. I remember during that same time traveling 8 hours each way to visit my dying mom, balancing weekly appointments and therapies for my 1-year-old while trying to be there to see her. I don't remember much joy, but I can look back now and see the patience and endurance that was being built within me. Sometimes simply having no choice but to continue walking through trials helps strengthen you for what's next. Just like in Joseph's life, it may not be until afterward that you can see all the ways that God was moving and working, but we can still trust that he is. And therein lies the joy. So, the attitude in trials is joy. Even if we don't know what is happening or why it's happening, we know who is with us. So we have joy. All right. Next, think about the what's next of trials. James 1:12 says, "Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him." If you endure, if you keep walking with the Lord through trials, you will receive a crown of life from the Lord. It's a promise. It's a guarantee. Keep walking with Jesus. Keep focused on Jesus. Keep looking to Jesus through the trials, and one day, a crown is waiting for you. One day, you'll get to rest from your labors. One day, the trials will be over. One day, you won't need patience anymore, for our hope will be realized. But for now, we do need it. We do need patience and endurance to keep going. We do need eyes continually refocused onto eternity. And trials do that. Trials keep us longing for something else. It's hard to be caught up in the temporary when your present circumstance is awful. When things are bad, eternity seems all the sweeter. And that's what I want for my life. What about you? I want a life that's focused on eternity. I want a life longing for meeting Jesus. And if it takes trials to refocus me and to keep me looking heavenward, then bring them on. I can tell you from personal experience, I have never felt closer to God than I have since all that, since what was the worst year of my life, 2021. because having seen God carry me through the fire and above the waves, it's motivated me to keep seeking and to keep focused on Him. Here's what I know. Trials are coming for everyone. Either you're encompassed all about right now, or the ice is about to break beneath you. Trials happen to every single person in the world. The difference that we have as Christians is that we fight them knowing that we cannot be overcome by them, so long as we rely on the Lord as our strength. The waves cannot overpower Him. The flames cannot consume Him. And when you are on the Lord's side, the same is true for you. The worst that this life has to offer may come, but God will give you a crown if you endure. A glimpse of the glory of God in eternity will make all of this seem as nothing. Momentary light affliction. So let's end by talking about this in relationship to our marriages. What do you do when trials come? How do you react? How do you interact with your spouse? Well, understand that when your spouse is enduring a trial, they may not be smiling and laughing and, being themselves. That's okay. Keep shining your light and pointing them to Jesus. Keep being Jesus to them, knowing that He was compassionate and met people where they were. Don't try to force them into happiness or anything like that. If you've been there, then you know that that's obnoxious. Don't be obnoxious. Sit with them, love them, endure with them, and cover them in prayer. If you're the one enduring trial, don't take it out on your spouse. It's not their fault. Or maybe it is. But no matter what, it's something that God can use to bring about patience and endurance, which means it's something to glorify God with. And if that's the case, then it isn't something to constantly nag your spouse about or whine about or complain about. It simply is what it is. Find a way to praise God in it. Find a way to show Jesus in it. We all know what Jesus endured. Not His share of things. No, He endured our share of things. He suffered because He came to earth to take our place, to bear our sins. And if He was willing to do that, then we must be willing to go through the hardships of life that can bring us closer to Him. Share your struggles with your spouse. Let them know what's bringing you down, and do your best to lift those things up to God instead of just simply venting them to your husband. Ask them to pray with you and for you. Use this as a means to make conversations between you more spiritual. I trust that in all things, if we will allow Him, God will make a way to be glorified. Really, with or without us. Wasn't that Mordecai's message to Esther? God's going to find a way to be glorified. I hope that you'll join in being part of that story. So if you are enduring a trial right now, know that there is a way to bring God glory in it, and look for that way. Strive to bear the burden so that you can gain patience and endurance. Well, that's going to do it. Short and sweet today for today's episode of Wifey Wednesdays. Join me each week, video or audio, as we discuss different things that we go through as wives. Prayerfully, this is going to encourage you on your walk with Jesus. Thank you again for being with me. And until next time, remember, love God, love your husband.